Rassie Erasmus. 2 World Cups, back-to-back. The most successful coach in Springbok history. And now, he wants to stay until 2031. There's just one problem. SA Rugby won't make the offer. Because Rassie isn't asking for just his contract. He's demanding his entire coaching staff. All 8 of them are locked in until 2031 too. Tony Brown, clubs around the world are watching him. Felix Jones, Deon Davids, Duane Vermeulen. And they all have options. So SA Rugby has a choice. Pay for the entire dynasty, or risk losing it all. And while they're sitting on their hands, at least 2 overseas clubs are circling Rassie right now. This isn't just about one contract. This is about whether the greatest coaching setup in world rugby stays together or gets ripped apart. Because SA Rugby won't pay the price. The clock is ticking, and 2027 is closer than you think. Let's start with what Rassie actually wants. A contract extension until that's 6 more years on top of the 7 he's already done since 2018. 13 years total, as the man running South African rugby. Now if you're from the Northern Hemisphere, that probably sounds absolutely mental. England changes coaches like they change tea bags. France can't keep anyone longer than a World Cup cycle. Even New Zealand, the so-called benchmark of stability, moved on from Steve Hansen after 8 years. 13 years? That's not a coaching contract. That's a marriage. But here's the thing. Rassie isn't just some coach who rocks up, runs training, picks the team and goes home. He's director of rugby. He oversees everything. The youth systems, the franchise alignment, the conditioning program, the game plan philosophy that filters down from the box to the Bulls to the school teams in the Free State. He's not just coaching a team, he's building a system, and systems take time. The 2019 World Cup win, that was the foundation. The 2023 back-to-back, that was proof the system works. But 2027 and 2031, those would be legacy territory. 3 World Cups, maybe 4. A decade-plus dynasty that no coach in the professional era has ever achieved. That's what Rassie sees, not just trophies, immortality, but there's a catch, and it's a big one. SA Rugby hasn't made an offer yet. Not a formal one anyway. And according to reports, they're dragging their feet on purpose. Why? Because Rassie's demand isn't just about him. It's about everyone. His entire coaching staff. Every single assistant. All of them locked in until 2031 alongside him. Mzwandile Stick, Dan Human, Felix Jones, Jerry Flannery, Deon Davids, Tony Brown, Duane Vermeulen, Jacko Paper, 8 world-class coaches, all with contracts expiring in 2027, all needing extensions to 2031 if Rassie gets his way. That's not a coaching staff, that's a payroll nightmare. Think about it from SA Rugby's perspective. You're being asked to commit to 6 more years of salaries for 9 people. Not just any 9 people. 9 of the most sought-after coaches in world rugby. The kind of coaches who could walk into top 14 clubs, premiership sides or international setups tomorrow and get paid handsomely. The financial commitment is enormous. And it's not just the salaries, it's the risk. What if the team stops winning? What if Rassie's methods, which work brilliantly now, become stale in 3 years? What if one of those assistants wants out but you've locked them in? SA Rugby is a union, not a billionaire's toy. They don't have bottomless pocket. Every rand spent on coaching salaries is a rand not spent on grassroots development, on facilities, on keeping talented players from going overseas. So they're stalling, waiting, hoping maybe Rassie backs down on the everyone or no one demand. But Rassie doesn't back down, ever. And that's where this gets complicated. Because here's what SA Rugby is really worried about. It's not just the money, it's the precedent. If you give Rassie and his entire staff contracts until 2031, you're essentially saying, we trust this group so completely that we're willing to bet the next 2 World Cup cycles on them. That's a huge vote of confidence, but it's also a huge risk. Let's talk about Tony Brown specifically. The guy is a coaching genius. The attack shapes he's designed for the Springboks have made them not just dominant, up front, but dangerous out wide. Teams used to think they could survive the backpack and edge the backs. Not anymore. Brown has been linked with international jobs. New Zealand wanted him in their setup. Japan would take him in a heartbeat. Top 14 clubs are always sniffing around. The man has options, serious options. Same goes for Felix Jones. The Irish connection means Premiership clubs know exactly what he brings. Deon Davids, already proven himself at franchise level before stepping up to the box. Gerry Flannery, Leinster loved him. These aren't guys who need the Springboks. The Springboks need them. And that's Rassie's leverage. He knows if SA Rugby lowballs this negotiation, if they try to do individual contracts or shorter extensions, the whole thing falls apart. Tony Brown gets poached by France. Felix Jones goes back to Ireland. The infrastructure that won back-to-back World Cups gets dismantled piece by piece. So Rassie is playing hardball, all or nothing, everyone until 2031. Or he walks. And walking? That's not an empty threat anymore. Because while SA Rugby is debating whether they can afford to keep Rassie, at least 2 foreign clubs are reportedly monitoring the situation closely. Now the reports don't name names, which honestly makes it more intriguing. Is it a top 14 giant like Toulouse or La Rochelle? A Premiership club with ambitions like Saracens or Leicester? Or maybe even an international union looking for a transformational figure? Here's what we know. Rassie has proven he can rebuild rugby programs from the ground up. He did it with Munster. He did it with the Stormers. He did it with the Springboks. Any organization looking to make a serious statement would be absolutely foolish not to at least make an inquiry. And Rassie, he's not South African by birth alone. He's lived overseas. He's coached overseas. He knows what's out there. He knows what those clubs pay. He knows the freedom some of them offer compared to the bureaucracy of national unions. Money probably isn't the main motivator for Rassie. The man is already set financially. But respect, control, the ability to do things his way without committee approvals and budget constraints, that might tempt him. Now here's where it gets really interesting for those of you in the Northern Hemisphere. Imagine Rassie taking over your club. Imagine that Springbok DNA, the physicality, the tactical discipline, the unshakable belief, being injected into your team. Terrifying, right? Or exciting, depending on which side you're on. But for South Africa, it's a nightmare scenario. Lose Rassie, lose the staff, and suddenly you're scrambling to rebuild right before a World Cup cycle. The continuity that's made them so dominant, gone overnight. So why does any of this actually matter beyond just South African rugby politics? Because what's happening here is a test case for modern international coaching. For decades, the model has been simple. Hire a coach for 4 years, hope they win a World Cup. If they do, maybe give them one more cycle. Then move on before things get stale. It's the churn and burn approach, and most unions love it, because it keeps costs manageable and gives them an easy out if results go south. But Rassie is challenging that entire philosophy. He's saying, what if continuity is more valuable than freshness? What if building something that lasts is better than short-term results? And you know what? He's got the trophies to back it up. 2 World Cups, multiple rugby championship titles, wins over every major rugby nation. A game plan so refined that other teams are still trying to figure it out years later. That doesn't happen by accident. It happens because Rassie and his staff have had time to implement, adjust, and perfect their systems. Time to develop players from franchise level to international. Time to create depth across positions. Time to build trust. Now if SA Rugby caves and gives him 2031, it changes the game for everyone. Suddenly other unions have to ask themselves, should we be thinking long-term too? Should we be investing in coaching continuity instead of chopping and changing every cycle? But if SA Rugby refuses, and Rassie walks, that sends a different message. It says even the most successful coach in your country's history isn't worth the investment. It says short-term budget concerns trump long-term success. Either way, what happens next will shape how international rugby thinks about coaching for the next decade. So here's where we are. Rassie, his staff wants 2031, but SA Rugby hasn't put an offer on the table, and the longer they wait, the more real those overseas options become. This isn't about one man's ego, or one union being cheap. This is about 2 completely different visions for what success should look like. Rassie sees a dynasty, a decade-plus project that could deliver 3, maybe 4 World Cups, a legacy that cements South Africa as the dominant force in world rugby for a generation. SA Rugby sees financial commitments they might not be able to sustain, the possibility of being locked into contracts that become deadweight if things go wrong. And somewhere in the middle is the truth. Maybe Rassie until 2031 is genius. Maybe it's madness. Maybe it's both. But one thing is certain, the decision SA Rugby makes in the next few months will define the Springboks for the next decade. Either they back the man who brought them glory and risk everything on continuity, or they let him walk and hope they can rebuild without him. The clock is ticking, the offers are circulating, and rugby's biggest standoff is just getting started.